With us today is a group of people who have a good news story for us. It's a good news story about how a community comes together in the face of religious and racial bigotry and throws that bigot a curveball. It's a good news story about how a diverse community comes together and fights the bigotry that was brought into our community by someone from the outside. With us today in speaking order are Kassem Allie, the Executive Director of the Islamic Center of America, Terry Gallagher, who is the Communications Director of the InterFaith Leadership Council of Metropolitan Detroit, and also with us is Bob Bruttell, who is the Chair of the InterFaith Leadership Council, as well as a Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Detroit Mercy. They're here to tell us about a very special event that occurred back in April of 2011, and how a community came together for a common good. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kassem.
Thank you, Dawn. Before we get to the main topic of our discussion, which is the incident that happened in 2011, maybe I should just give a little background of the Islamic Center of America and the Muslim and Islamic community in the Metropolitan Detroit area. First of all, I want to thank the Valassis Company for inviting us to share our thoughts on diversity at this forum. More importantly, I want to thank the Valassis Company for realizing the importance and recognizing the importance of promoting diversity and multiculturalism in the workplace. I believe that the goals of diversity are never achieved unless they are nurtured at every level. That means at work, at home, and in public. The most productive attempts at diverse understanding are when people meet face to face. Thank you for coming, sir. He said there were a lot of people online, and we want to say hi to those people online, but this is probably the best forum so we can really actually see each other face to face and interact. We at the Islamic Center are proud to be recognized as a leading partner in promoting strength through diversity. We are also proud to be a part of the greatest country in the world, a country that has a population where everyone comes from somewhere else. America is really the epitome of strength through diversity. The Islamic Center of America is recognized as one of the largest Islamic organizations in North America. The roots of our organization start with humble beginnings in Highland Park, Michigan in the late 40s. However, the Detroit area has been home to Muslim communities for over a century. The first mosque was established here in 1921. Today, a variety of mosques can be found throughout Detroit, and many of those congregations are building new mosques, schools, as a direct result of their confidence and prosperity and their growth in this area. Immigration, conversion to Islam, and the increase in the population of second, third, and fourth generation Muslim Americans has fueled the creation of dozens of new, modest houses of worship. Many smaller mosques occupy storefronts, refurbished churches, and even people's basements. Together, these mosques represent a multicultural tapestry with a diverse doctrinal and ethnic, differences that are as distinct as many of the churches in the Christian tradition. The variety ranges from one of the oldest mosques in Harper Woods that is Albanian to the mosque that was founded by Elijah Muhammad in Detroit in the 1930s to the 65,000 square foot Islamic Center of America in Dearborn, which I am a part of. Arabs are still the largest Muslim population in southeastern Michigan, while some of the first Muslims that came to this country were from Turkey, the Balkans, and Asia. Southeastern Michigan is known as the center of Muslim culture in the United States. The strong concentration of Muslim Americans in Michigan is primarily due to Muslim workers who came to Detroit to work in Henry Ford's Highland Park and Rouge plants in the early 1900s. Many of those workers and their families came together in the early 60s to found the Islamic Center of Detroit, which was later renamed the Islamic Center of America. The building we now occupy is considered the largest mosque in North America, serving several thousand families. The Muslim community in Michigan has grown over the years to be recognized as a full partner in interfaith cooperation and communication on many levels. The digital age has brought so much attention about everything Islamic that sometimes it becomes confusing for non-Muslims to know what the Islamic faith really is and what it stands for. I think the best approach for anyone to really know about the Islamic faith is to actually visit a mosque and to talk to real Muslims. The Islamic Center hosts thousands of non-Muslims every year, including people from churches, universities, government agencies, and many foreign visitors. We would be honored to host this company and any other that want to learn about Islam and Muslim Americans. We are here today to discuss diversity and multiculturalism. I think a great example of how strength through diversity is demonstrated is an episode that happened last year at the Islamic Center. I believe that the ties between faith traditions in our area are as strong as anywhere in the country, and the demonstration of that manifested itself in the glorious gathering on April 21st, 2011, the day before Pastor Terry Jones was scheduled to visit, which happened to be Good Friday that year. And when someone asked him if he knew it was Good Friday, he was in being a pastor, you'd think he would know. He really didn't know. On that day, literally every faith tradition imaginable came together to stand as one in opposition to hate, bigotry, and ignorance that was coming to our beloved community in the person of Pastor Terry Jones. Along with our prominent size comes substantial attention. We have been considered the go-to mosque when anything noteworthy happens and someone decides that they need an Islamic viewpoint. Unfortunately, we attract substantial unfriendly attention. I remember that day in April when I first heard that an obscure Florida Christian pastor was coming to our center to warn that Islam was a danger to America. At first I thought he was just another kook who wanted to rant and rave and have his few minutes of fame, and then he would return to obscurity. Our first inclination was to ignore him, but then things started to escalate when the community feared that his appearance at the Islamic Center would provoke unpredictable reactions and unwanted consequences. There was a great debate within the faith and civil rights community about how to address the pastor's proposed appearance. Opinions range from completely ignoring him and his event to completely overwhelming him with a counter-protest of several thousand people. We always knew our partners in the InterFaith community would stand with us. But really in this case, they, our partners, said, "He claims to be a Christian, let us help you take care of this." From that moment on, I truly believe that the hand of God used Pastor Jones as a tool. And like always, when God wants to teach us, he presents us with a dilemma. And he brings good people together to solve it. In this case, he brought Bob Bruttell, Terry Gallagher, and me together to help solve this serious challenge to the peace of our community. I believe Pastor Jones gave us the opportunity of a lifetime that resulted in a stronger, more diverse community with greater bonds of friendship and understanding, not just in our area, but all over the world. With that, I would like to give the mic over to my friend Terry and continue the discussion about the actual incident further into the discussion.
Thank you, Kassem. That's very moving to think about it after a year and a half. I haven't given it a lot of thought in that year and a half. Let me say first how I got into this work. Our group is called the InterFaith Leadership Council Metropolitan Detroit. My interest really is on the second half of that. My interest is, I am a member of a church and a believer in a faith, but my interest is in Metropolitan Detroit. I'm really interested in making a better community here, and that's one reason I was so interested in engaging with this group. I worked in media relations and communications for the University of Michigan for a career, about 30 years. At the end of my career, I worked at the Dearborn campus, where, among other things, I did the defense of the institution's reputation during a time when we installed, you might remember this, we installed foot washing sinks for students who were observant Muslim students washing themselves a couple times a day, face, hands, and feet. Different traditions follow different customs, but the people who hate Islam, the people who hate Muslims came out against us in a big way on a national level. And we were able to mount a pretty sophisticated PR campaign to defend ourselves from that. It led to, among other things, an airport in Indianapolis had been lobbied by its employees for foot washing, and they weren't going to do it, they weren't going to do it, they weren't going to to it, and at the end of our struggle, the airport management said, well, if it's okay with the University of Michigan, it's okay with us. So they went ahead and installed these things at their campus. So during that work, I got really closely connected with a lot of interfaith leaders in the community, and when the Interfaith Leadership Council was getting its legs underneath it, I was asked to become involved. So my real interest is in media relations and communications, and also, like I said, in making Detroit a better place. I think that probably in a business like this, a truly global business, but based here in Livonia and in the Detroit area, one of your challenges is you're trying to recruit a global talent pool. You have to convince people that Detroit is not such a terrible place. If you believe the national media, you think it's a hellhole from one end to the other, and it isn't. We know that here we get along. We know that's true about our region, that we really do get. The only dispute we really have among each other is whether you're from the east side or the west side. I mean, that's a real lingering kind of animosity we've got among ourselves. So, in any case, I was involved in this Interfaith Leadership Council during a time when we got word that Terry Jones was coming to Dearborn to burn a Koran in front of the Islamic Center of America. For us, it was intolerable to do this, but among the responses that you can come up with, how many different ways can you respond to that? As Kassem mentioned, there were hotheads in the community who were prepared to mount a real counter-demonstration that would not have helped our region get a better reputation or help reconciliation. We came up, the Interfaith Leadership Council was asked by the Islamic Center to come up with a proposal, and we planned a two-pronged kind of strategy. One, we would hold an event to counter Terry Jones. The timing of the event, as Kassem mentioned, he was planning to come on Good Friday. Holding an interfaith event in Detroit on Good Friday is pretty tough. I mean, the Catholics and the Episcopalians and all the Christian faiths, they're busy on Good Friday. They have things going on. Jewish leaders are busy on Fridays. The Islamic Center itself, I mean, prayers are Friday afternoon. Our plan was to go Thursday, the communications plan is to steal the news cycle. When our goal that we announced explicitly was when Terry Jones arrived in Detroit and picked up the Free Press on the morning that he arrived on the morning of the Friday, he should see our picture. So that was our goal, was to hold this event, this interfaith event, where people could express solidarity, but also to do it at a time that we would go live at 5. We actually planned it so that we could have our event, the peak of our event, the most visual aspect of our event, would be at 5 p.m. on Thursday before the Friday that he arrived. And I think that I think we can show one news clip to show that our successful campaign worked that way.
It was an impressive sight. I want to show you the video from Chapter 7 as hundreds of people came out of the mosque. They actually held an interfaith program inside, including Bishop Alan Vigneron from the Catholic Church was here, a number of high-level dignitaries from the Baptist Church, the Episcopalian Church. The Greek Church is on Altar Road here as well, so they really had a very unified force. They brought them outside, they locked arms to show that they are all standing together in the face of these accusations from Pastor Terry Jones. Their message is one of unity. We talked to the Imam from the mosque, and he is calling on all Muslims tomorrow to not show up here, but to go to the Civic Center and hold their rally there so that they avoid any problems with Pastor Jones.
I call for one more time on the Muslim community not to respond to this person, not to be violent, to totally ignore this person. This man does not speak for anyone but for himself.
So I think if the world could see what we represent here in Detroit, we represent one community, different faiths, but one community. So I'm very, very pleased with the turnout today. Sometimes people intend something for bad, and God works good things. And that this coming together is one of those good things. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to bear witness in our community.
One of the gentlemen I spoke with earlier said they really owe Terry Jones a thank you because he has unified this community in a way they have never seen before. The Imam said they will be holding their prayer service here at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon, but then he's calling on everyone to go to the Civic Center over near the police station to hold their peaceful rally and not to show up here, not to give Terry Jones the satisfaction of any violence. Reporting live, I'm Mary Conway, Channel 7 Action News.
I'm glad we got a chance to see that, because you get to see from the helicopter and all that I mean, I don't want to be craven about this, but I do take a lot of pleasure in what I do for a living, that's communication at a high level. Is somebody got those 1,000 people to gather at the mosque, but then also to organize a media strategy around that. What I said at the beginning was we wanted, when Terry Jones arrived in Detroit on the Friday, that he pick up a free press and he see us on the front page, and even the people in the back can see this is our picture from the event. You see our friend Kenneth Flowers there, who was on the video, saying we are one community, many faiths, but one community, and that's clearly our message is here in Detroit, we really believe that a better community will result from interfaith actions like this and being connected with each other. Thank you. How about after that?
Great. All right, so yes, I also want to thank you for having us. So this is really an opportunity for us to think back and to analyze an event after a year, and this has been a good opportunity for us to do that. We did some analysis right afterwards, but we really decided that it's useful to think about it a year later. And what's valuable about this is a number of things. One is that that when you have a provocation come into a community like we did, and like happens more often than you imagine. I see my friend Rahman Singh there from the Hidden Falls Gurdwara in Plymouth, and you know about the incident in Wisconsin recently. And so there are these things that happen, these provocations that happen in our community that require us, despite the fact that we'd like to go about our quiet lives without being really bothered, we have to raise some sort of a resistance that is significant. We do credit ourselves with having pushed back on Terry Jones enough so that we have marginalized him. He's no longer the big deal, and he still tries to make a splash, and he's talking about doing something again in Detroit. But he doesn't get the kind of attention that he was getting, and that we do take credit for that. We came up with an idea about how we could take a force for good and use it as ourselves as a force for good, and take this person who definitely was a force for distress and was really an annoyance to our community, and do something really positive with it. What we did initially was in advance of him coming, we asked the community to sign a statement, and we got thousands and thousands of people to sign a statement in support of civil discourse. And so I would say that one of the first principles that we have in interfaith is that the civic community, or the civil society, has to have civil discourse. Without civil discourse, we really can't build community. Communities are of their nature very diverse, not just religiously, in all sorts of ways. Communities are diverse, and so we have to build a community where there is civil discourse, so that, because the civil discourse itself is foundational to building community. That once you have an insistence, when good people are insisting that we have civil discourse, then we can get around to the other things that are necessary to build a community where we can work together. Hate and bigotry are corrosive. And that's why we have to act. It's why we have to get up and be active. I say to many of the people that are involved in these things, when they tell me how busy they are, I say, the only people that are doing these things are the busy people. If you're not busy, you're probably not one of the folks that's going to be able to be effective, because the busy people are the ones that are figuring out what to do. And so when hate comes into your community and threatens to corrode the other values, the foundational values that we have in our community, we have to act. We have to do something about it, and sometimes we have to do it in a big way, the way we did in April of 2010. Interfaith itself is one of the creative tools that a community has. I think this is a movement that's really a movement of our time, this idea of interfaith. I teach history at the University of Detroit Mercy, and I can't find a movement like this that existed in prior times. So we really have come up with a tool, a way of dealing with building community that wasn't available to us before. And it's a creative tool, and the way we think of it at the Interfaith Leadership Council is that it's a creative tool that is for the civic good. Terry mentioned that his emphasis is building Metropolitan Detroit and using his good offices and his creative knowledge of the media for building community. And that's exactly the mission of the Interfaith Leadership Council. Our mission is to build a community using this creative tool of interfaith. Why is it a creative tool? Well, we talk about this a lot. I'm going to talk about the opposite, or something different actually, in a second. But we talk about the fact that we share a lot in common, and that is true. We do share a number of things in common in faith groups. We share a sense that faith is important. We share a sense that love is one of the highest values that you can have. But the fact is that we wouldn't need and wouldn't have the kind of diversity in our community that we do if there weren't these huge differences. I mean, people didn't form these institutions because they just decided one day that they had a lot of extra energy, and so, you know, they would decide to form an institution that decides that there's a Trinity, and then another group decided, no, I really don't like Trinity, I kind of like the idea of one God, and so let's create Unitarians, and, you know, because I think it'd be kind of fun. Now, what they do is they think that these things are critical to their way of thinking about life, right? And so these differences go deep, you know, you have to start thinking deeply about them to realize, you know, how different it can be, for instance, a Trinitarian or a Unitarian, or to believe in, you know, the idea of a unifying God that has many powers, like the Hindus believe, and so on. So you have to give some thought to your differences and realize that there has to be some creative tools for dealing with all of those differences. We come together because we have some real issues in our community that I think can be solved by working together using our highest values, those values that say that we can love one another. We called the group that met at the mosque that day a vigil for the beloved community. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that Martin Luther King used that term, the beloved community. And so we were holding a vigil for the beloved community. We were saying that this is a community that loves one another, and we're going to show that ritually. We're going to do something that demonstrates that we love one another. There's a need for this that's ongoing. The need for it, I mentioned the fact that we've had several vigils at Gurdwaras lately because the hate that was demonstrated in Wisconsin really had a ripple effect over the whole country. You wonder, where does this come from, right? You wonder, and you realize at some level that this hate is not just one crazy person. It's a crazy person who decided to target, that is his craziness, decided to target a marginalized community. And that's what happens over and over again, is that marginalized community, people that we are not holding in the highest respect as a community the way we should, we're allowing them to be vilified, we're allowing that bigotry to take place at a low level. These people, you know, that you can go to the various websites that track this sort of thing, like the Southern Poverty Law Center, and find that the amount of hate groups in the United States has risen in the last 4 years by some 400% or something. I mean, it's just a tremendous number. These things are playing themselves out in our community on a sort of a constant basis, and we're kind of letting it go, and then we see this manifestation of it, as we did in Wisconsin, where one, you know, likely insane person, but nevertheless somebody who targeted a community because he saw them as marginalized. And it shows the need for education in a very ironic way, and that is that the person, in all likelihood, was targeting Sikhs because he thought they were Muslims, because they wear turbans, and somehow he connected wearing a turban with being a Muslim. So, and we've heard that before, the first person that was killed after 9/11 was a Sikh, and it was the same sort of incident. So we really realize that there has to be some creative and strong community energy collectively put into this idea of interfaith, that it's a creative tool, it's a way for people to join together and do something with each other using their highest values. And so I'll leave you with the three things that are part of the Interfaith Leadership Council's mission in brief. We have begun to talk about our mission in three terms. Our mission is connection, conciliation, and I just recently began to call it counseling, although because it's another C. But we had been calling it education, and maybe education says more about what we're doing than counseling does, but we like the idea of using C's, I guess. So the connection is interfaith organizing, getting people to work congregation to congregation, between and among denominations, so that they recognize one another as having an interest in this area, of using their faith in terms of civic activities to work with other people who are trying to build a community. That idea of building community, you know, I keep thinking about it. What does it actually mean to build community? We talk about building community a lot. And one of the things that we do, one of the reasons why we all like to live in a city is because there's lots of things that we can connect with. And certainly, we can certainly find ways to connect on our highest values. The second thing is conciliation, and that we demonstrated that, this idea of conciliation, bringing the community together across denominational lines to say, stand together, elbow to elbow, arm in arm, and say to someone who came from outside the community, you're not going to come in and destroy what we're building here. You have no right to do that, and as a matter of fact, we're too strong for that anyway. We're not going to allow that to happen. And then the last thing is education, and you've certainly helped us do some of that here today. We're really happy to be here with you, and to do that, we have a lot of work to do in education. A professor at Boston University that I have a lot of respect for, Stephen Prothero, wrote a book recently called Religious Literacy. And in that book, he studies how much people know about religious literacy, how much they know about faiths. Well, you would expect that, you know, that maybe most people don't know a lot about Islam, or most people don't know a lot about being a Unitarian, or most people don't know a lot about being a Hindu. Well, the fact that he discovered is that most people don't know very much about their own religion. He tested them, and he found that most people know very little about their own religions, and they know almost nothing about anybody else's. So here we are living in a community where people have, everyone in this room, you know, has some strong values. You don't have to belong to a religious congregation. You can be someone who says that I don't believe in that stuff, but you do believe in some stuff, and you believe in it strongly, right? So we all have these things that are strong values that we hold, and among those strong values are those folks in this community, in our communities, who are religious and hold those values above all others, and yet we don't know what they hold as a value. We don't see what it is that makes them tick on a daily basis. We don't know why they decide to make one decision over another decision in terms of civil society, and therefore we don't know how to talk to them. Really, when we get up and, you know, and expound what we think should happen for society, we should have this in society, or we should not have that, we should have more money for education, we should have less money for education. We don't know how to talk to each other because we don't know how they made the decisions in the first place on why they would think one way or the other. Who feels strongly about personal responsibility? Who feels more strongly about community, joint community responsibility? How do you talk to a person who feels more strongly about personal responsibility when you think it's a communal responsibility? These religious groups reinforce these things every day. I mean, if people don't do anything, study anything at all in their lives, it's very likely that they go to church on the weekend, at some point during the weekend, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and at some point they are being taught and listening and learning certain values. So it's the one place where people are actually learning something, and we ought to know what they're learning. We ought to know what it is that they're thinking and why they're thinking the way they are. So religious literacy has become one of the really important things for us. But combating hate and finding ways, we really have to discover some ways to intervene. I mean, I think that's not too strong a word, to intervene into these pockets of hate and bigotry in our country and figure out how we're going to turn their minds. I'll finish with one example of that. There were some other supporters of Terry Jones that were supposedly out of Port Huron, who were going to come and be sort of with him to help sponsor his event when he came to Detroit. We invited those people ahead of time to come and talk to us, and they met with some imams and some ministers from Dearborn the week before. And they decided that maybe this wasn't quite right, that they had heard wrong about this community, and they decided not to sponsor him. Now there's an intervention. We didn't change them for all time or whatever, but we changed them enough to think that that action might not be a proper action, that they really weren't being completely Christian. That's what the Christian ministers told them, coming in and desecrating the holiday, coming in and desecrating the Holy Week. And they actually responded to that. They said, well, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be desecrating Holy Week. That doesn't sound so good to us either. And so they didn't participate. So there are things we can do, and we have to act together, and we have to do them. So thank you.
At this moment, we'd love to entertain questions from the audience. Todd?
I'm curious what happened on that Good Friday in terms of the rest of the story. What did he see when he came to the mosque that Friday that he showed up?
Well, you know, what happened, the question is what happened when Terry Jones came on Friday. Well, there are other places in the community that think that they have important things to do too. I mean, we weren't the only ones that thought that we had a responsibility. And the prosecutor, the Wayne County prosecutor, Kim Worthy, thought that she had a responsibility to keep the peace also. And so she made sure that he was intercepted at the airport, and he was brought to court, and he was made to discuss whether or not he had to post a peace bond. And so he actually didn't get a chance to demonstrate very much at all. I don't know whether or not it's proof that there is or isn't a God, because his gun actually went off in his car and he didn't hit himself.
Talk about media strategy. He shot up his car in the parking lot of Channel 2. If I pulled a stunt like that. You know.
We're thinking that it maybe does prove that there is a God. It was like, this is close this time. Next time it might not be so close. I don't know. But at any rate, it wasn't. I think we would have preferred that there not be a prosecutorial presence. We really didn't want it to be seen that somehow we were associated with not wanting dialogue. We kept telling him we want dialogue. We just don't want bigotry. When you come to our town, if you want to have civil discourse, if you want to meet with Muslims and talk about your deeply felt differences between your Christian faith and the Muslim faith, and learn something from the people that you talk to, and teach something to them also if you have something to teach, you're welcome in our community. We really do honor the First Amendment that says that you have freedom of speech in this country. We ought to provide you with a place to do your peaceful protest. We're a community that has peaceful protests all the time, and we expect civil discourse during that peaceful protest. So we were not allowed to have that. He was sent away. Eventually had to come back to court, and I think that was the appeals court decided that the lower court was wrong in requiring so much of him, and said that his civil rights had been challenged, and it was not a good thing. But we weren't really. We did what we wanted to do, which was to change the news cycle, and we accomplished that pretty well.
He actually didn't show up that day because of the legal issues. Right. He did, however. There was a second coming of Terry Jones in 2012, around the same period, and at that time it was decided that there wouldn't be this attention paid to his visit, and basically he was ignored both by the media, by the community activists, the Islamic Center. The Islamic Center on that day was deserted. There was only him and a few, maybe 2 or 3 of his followers that were in the in front of the parking lot at the Islamic Center, and they stayed there for a short period of time, and they left. And I think that sent a message that we really cannot pay attention really to the message of hate and bigotry that he was bringing. After all, he really is an obscure pastor. His congregation consists of, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 10 or 12 people. But in this day and age, in the digital age, everybody owns their own media outlet. It's called a computer. And when he decided to create some sensationalism with some very vicious things in Florida, namely, probably the thing that got the most attention was he was proposing to burn the Quran, and that attracted attention from all over the world, from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, from the White House. They actually called him and pleaded with him not to proceed with doing what he did. Eventually, he did burn the Quran a few weeks later, and there was an unfortunate reaction overseas, and that's kind of what prompted our concern about him visiting our community and really trying to provoke some type of reaction. And really the underlying message that he was bringing was of hate, bigotry, and provocation. Provocation, I think, is the key. Not to mention, I think he was trying to solicit a court case. There has been a court case, and he won. Unfortunately, he didn't make any money on that court case. His attorneys took it all. There's another court case pending now, and I believe that he is marginalized to a certain extent, but out there are many other people like Terry Jones who we will have to scrutinize and address when the time comes.
Excellent question. Any other questions?
I'm curious, I see you did get the front page coverage. How supportive was local media to your position? In other words, was the news so big that they had no choice but to put it on the front page, or did you pitch it to them that how important it was that they did that, and they agreed?
We pitched it, but they agreed as well. I mean, there were helicopters over through the Channel 7 was not, I think it was Channel 7 we showed. They were not the only one. We probably had every media, we own the news cycle. We had public radio, WWJ and WJR both. I mean, you reach those people. The Detroit News does not, I don't think they had a paper, some reason or other. We didn't get the front page of the news the next day. But it wasn't just local. The State Department's, the U.S. State Department sent in a film crew so they could show around the world what is the American response to religious hysteria, religious hatred. That we really kind of got a message out on a global level from this thing in Detroit. What you asked about what happened on Friday, in the media world, what happens on Friday, no one pays attention to. That didn't Mitt Romney put up 2 years of tax data a couple of weeks ago at 5:30 on a Friday afternoon? That's when you want to fire somebody if you got a real serious problem in your workplace or something. You don't want anybody to pay attention to it on Friday afternoon. So the whole idea that why we did ours on Thursday was to be ahead of the game. I mean, we did it on Thursday for a lot of practical reasons and et cetera, but we also did it on Thursday because of the news.
I don't think you had to do much arm twisting. I mean, after all,
media?
The Archbishop of
The
Detroit
Catholic
Archbishop of Detroit was there. There are a number of top-level bishops from the various churches, leaders. Not to mention, I mean, leading up to our plans, we received really a tidal wave of support, of requests from all over the state of Michigan. I mean, from every corner of the state of Michigan, and for that matter, the United States, we received requests for people to come. We actually had a motorcycle gang, wanted to come and set up their motorcycles in front of the Islamic Center. We had a Wiccan. I don't know if anybody knows what Wiccans are. I mean, they are pagans, I guess, and atheists. I mean, every color, every multicultural corner of the state was really represented there. And in the end, I think it all gelled, and that event I don't think really needed to be pitched to anyone.
We had 50 or 60 members of religious leaders. We had 2 members of Congress. We had mayors of 4 different communities there. All sorts of political power there.
I've been emphasizing, though, the amount of organizing work that's required. And let me say something at this moment, because I think you'd find this interesting. This was not magic. It wasn't just because a bunch of good people thought that we ought to do something. I mean, you've heard already about what Terry and what we came in. I mean, we came into meetings where people were really quite in a quandary about what to do, and we had to come up with a real plan that we thought would be effective, and that we could say in a large way. We could present it to people so that they would say, that sounds like it might work. That's not, because they had some other ideas that they thought might work or might be better or whatever. So that's one thing. But also, the fact that the religious leaders came together, we had spent the year before that, the Interfaith Leadership Council had spent the year before that organizing the Religious Leaders Forum. And they had been meeting for about actually a year and a half, because there were planning sessions before that, where they had been meeting together, these religious leaders, what we call the judicatory level religious leaders. They're the ones that are the archbishops, the bishops, and the president of the board of rabbis, and so on and so forth, including Michael Owen, who's the president of the Baptist Pastors of Detroit and vicinity. They had been meeting, about 25 of them, been meeting for about a year and a half. So that when we said to them, we're thinking of doing this, and we said to the Archbishop, what about you? And he said, I'll be there. I'll be there. My office should be there, but it has to be on Thursday. I can't do anything on Friday. I mean, they had some things that they thought were important and that they couldn't break. But they were ready to do it because they knew one another, and they could call, so we could call out on all of them and say, we're doing this together. And they recognize that. So this idea of sort of just letting the provocation happen and then hoping that you can do something when it comes about, we recognize now that we can't do that. We can't wait for that sort of thing to happen. We have to be prepared. We have to be organized to do something that will be effective. And that's takes some real grassroots community organizing. Strangely, it's sort of ironic to say grassroots about these high-level religious leaders, but nevertheless, they were pleased that they had a way of contacting one another and telling one another, we're going to do this together. And that might not have been the case 2 years before that. So.